Well, hello and good day to you all. My name is Dimitri Frederick, and you are watching Voices for the Voiceless, a Frederick Media production and a subsidiary of Frederick Capital. Today is November the 9th, 2012, and today's show is entitled The Results Are In. And today's show is actually a recap of this past week's election. It was a very powerful, long draining election for 2012. And, not many of us may be happy with our votes, or maybe some of us are happy with our votes, but it comes down to you going out there to vote, And I actually did my part for the first time. I had the opportunity to work at the polls. It was more than just an honor. It was a privilege to participate in this year's election, not necessarily because it was Obama, but it was a great experience, that opportunity that I got to have to see the actual electoral process and how it goes about, and all of us participating in this year's election. So we're going to give you a little recap of some things that I thought was surprisingly interesting in this year's election that caught my eye, and also to tell you that I was a bit surprised. I thought this election was going to draw like a 2001 or so of Al Gore and Bush Jr. Going back and forth about contesting these votes, the whole issue of Chads, if you remember those days. So, as I heard all the stuff that was going on in between, like Ohio's, the Floridas, where states were actually closing early voting or denying people or changing the times, all these issues, and hearing also President Obama as well as Governor Romney being able to hire attorneys, lower up basically. I think they said Obama had over 600 attorneys ready to fight, so I was ready to have a real draw boxing match, as you could say, in this year's election. So to have it a call that early, I was so shocked, really, because I thought, Romney did have a good chance to make a statement in the amount of things that he did throughout this election. But I think overall, when you look at the results, 306 to 206 votes, in favor of President Obama, re-elected. And they still counting, as of right now, they're still counting the Florida polls. And most likely that poll with about, I think it's 29 electoral votes will go towards President Obama, which, kind of like adding injury to the fact already that it was a blowout election, with the amount of money and billions of dollars, and you could say that was spent altogether. It could have been well spent, but as elections get more savvy, advanced, with a lot of campaigning, with a lot of video commercials and other means of social media to reach people, there's going to be a lot of money being spent in these future elections. And for whatever it is, this election was a very important election because of what's about to happen in the next few years. And also, today's about Friday, and so people are already debating the fiscal cliffs, the issues that's lagging. Even Speaker Barno was already talking about baby boomers, retiring in about 10,000 per year now, and 2015 is about to come out with 78 million. That's still in total. That's still in that gap range that will be retiring. So it does say a lot. So not that I'm in favor of just spending money like crazy like that. But, it was a very important election, and what will happen. I'd rather have, like I said, over and over, a clear-minded person than someone who's flip-flopping back and forth on the last year and a half about their choices. What's interesting when I think back about what Romney has done in this election, it just says that, he couldn't be trusted, and the people spoke, America spoke, and said that they'd rather have someone they know they could trust. In regards to that, like I said, it's funny when you think about, President Bush Jr. was not the greatest president that we had in office, but he stood for something. That's one that I have to give him respect for. Regardless if he was wrong about what he said and he believed it, he 100% stuck by it. And, for the first time we saw a presidential candidate who didn't stick by anything that he said he will do. It was back and forth. If anything, I think Congressman Ryan was just trying to play catch up with, or vice versa, of one person saying one thing and then, oh yeah, man, I didn't mean that totally. So, it confuses the people. And I think one of the points President Obama had made at his last debate was that when you're dealing with the military and there's lives at stake, you cannot be going flip-flopping back and forth about what is your choice, what is your decision. It doesn't work like that. So it's truly an honor to have President Obama be re-elected into a second term in office. So this brings me to the point of today's show. You know, we saw significant changes that was made in this election, like I talked about at the beginning of the show. And these significant changes is what I want to get to your attention, to pay attention to for the 2016 election, because these changes that we saw right now are going to play a significant role in what happens in 2016 and beyond. So the first thing is, look at the voter turnouts. I think it was a CNN poll that came out with 73% of white Americans came out to vote versus 93% of black African Americans came out to vote. And when you look at the Latino population, it was probably more than that. And I myself, as a person working at the polls November 6th, I truly saw the amount of Latinos, more than blacks actually, that came out to vote in drones. And it said a lot. And what it did say to me also is just a different perspective looking back, because that 73 to 93% says a lot. Because what it tells me is that when you look back about how many times, you know, we could say even in the last 100 years of African Americans, you know, having to vote in these elections, maybe not really wanted to, you know, that's why you used to hear the debates about, you know, the black vote never is counted, or black America never represents itself tremendously in coming out to the polls every 4 years to vote. Well, it kind of says the opposite today, because when you look at how 73% of people who are white Americans that didn't come out to vote, you know, for the first time, they felt like there was nothing for them. And I think that's kind of what that number was telling me when I look back at it, you know, versus the 93% for the first time, you know, you say the second term, that black Americans had a reason to vote for someone they could relate to. And so when you look at, you know, the choices we as black America has had in the past, it wasn't too many. You know, you could call former President Bill Clinton as the first black president. You know, he had the American interests at heart, you know, the people at heart. And that was probably the closest he saw a lot of people came out to vote during the last 2 terms of his presidency. But when you look at President Obama, you know, the turnout, you know, tremendously, there was a reason behind that. You know, for the first time, we could actually vote for someone that understands us, knows the pain, the struggle that we've gone through. And that's the main reason I think Governor Romney lost, because he couldn't really relate, you know, with his corporate background, and also that, you know, financial gap, of household gaps of those who are struggling to make ends meet and those who are unemployed right now versus those who are wealthy, have their private jets, have the big corporate offices to look over the city. You know, so those were the key issues, and I think there was a big gap, and especially with the Latino voters, I think Romney couldn't make that straight connection, and again, you know, that 47% comment probably definitely, you know, looking back in history, probably was, you know, the overlying fault that damaged his presidency, and many other things in between that. So that was a key factor. When you look at also this election, there was not a big event that took place. The amount of women that actually was elected into office. I could say, aside from President Obama winning his second term, this election, 2012, was an election for women's rights, women's movements, because you saw that, and this is where I was truly impressed with, 4 women in New Hampshire won each of the offices that was up for grabs. You know, that's powerful. That's also a history in the making as well. And you look at, you know, the first lesbian woman, Tammy Baldwin, in Wisconsin, to have gotten elected as a senator. You know, so it tells you the progress of where society is moving, where our country is saying that we need to go, where we're not being that restricted conservative nation that we used to once be. And you saw the difference in those old presidents that ran for office. This is a 21st century type of election, and the next couple coming years, you know, the Republicans need to pay attention to that. And I talked about that in one of my shows for the RNC convention, because when you look at, you know, what I said is that Romney and his campaign did not associate themselves and cannot relate properly to the middle class, you know, and also looking at the needs and desires of people. You know, they want change, you know, just which is what Obama ran on the first time, and moving forward is that second, you know, election campaign, moving forward, a new direction, new mindset, new way of thinking. And I think that's the problem with the Republican Party. They haven't caught up to that yet, and they have to make some hard decisions the next coming 4 years, because what's going to happen is that women are still going to be a force to be reckoned with, and I'll talk about that towards the end in a second. You know, the other thing is, you look at New York and Hawaii, and even my own state of Massachusetts, where Senator to elected Elizabeth Warren, excuse me, got elected and beat out Scott Brown. You know, again, all of those are significant changes to our political realm and the impact it will have in these coming elections down the line. So the last point is that look at also what our choices was for these additional questions that was in the ballots. Marijuana being one of the biggest issues, that America voted for the usage of marijuana for medical purposes. But then also you look at Colorado or other states that went to the extreme far right that said, listen, not forget about just legalizing for medical purposes. Let's actually legalize it just to smoke it. You know, that's kind of going to that extreme purposes, you know, but understand that, you know, there's a lot of health and sciences that's being developed at the same time. And, you know, I don't know all the ins and outs of it, but, you know, marijuana has been determined to help in a lot of various ways in people who have certain illnesses and whatnot. And again, these are changes that needs to be recognized and understand. And, you know, it's not about a decision about, you know, doing the political grind back and forth, you know, debating or taking sides. It's understanding where the world is moving towards and what's changing. And this brings me to the conclusion of today's show. You know, look at President Obama. You know, President Obama is a person that has the swagger. And what do I mean by the swagger? That swagger means the cool factor, you know, the likability factor, and can relate to the people factor. And, you know, when you look back at history, President Obama has it, President Clinton had it, President Bush Jr. had it. You know, you could say for senior, and we're moving towards you know, the change. But you saw even President Reagan, as far as back I'll go that far, had that swagger that I'm talking about, and that's what's appealing. When you look at people coming about, you know, running for presidential candidates or elections, look at that swagger mentality to see who has it or who doesn't, and it will most likely tell you who has that cool factor, that likability factor, to get the votes. And I always guarantee those will be the people that get into office, because again, look at what's happening, the marijuana, the women's movement, all these things are a factor in the change of mentality. It is not the old conservative mentality that we used to have in running for offices. So brings me to the next point, the women's movement. You know, it spoke for itself, the amount of people that got elected, but it spoke louder the amount of women that came into office. You know, I believe it might even be a record to see the change that's taking place, and I'm proud of that change. That's again letting more women get heard in the offices and also the decisions. For like the lack of nonsense that happened this election, talking about women's choices, that we as men in offices are sitting and dictating women's laws, women's rights. And I think this election kind of spoke towards women to step up and become the leaders that they need to be, so that their voices can be heard in these Senate hearings, these big decision meetings about women's choices. And I think you'll see that going forward as a very important thing. And that very important thing leads me to talking about Hillary Clinton. You know, as of right now, Hillary Clinton has decided to step down, I believe, for the second term of President Obama's term in office. And that's all good and dandy, because she needs to rest herself. And I say that lightly because she may not say she's going to run for election in 2016, but I guarantee you, look at, as we're going to continue to look at more into this topic down the line, I guarantee you that she most likely would have no choice because, again, the women's movement is serious, and I think women are ready to have a president woman to be elected. And so we've seen the changes of having the first black African American in office, you know, and again, with the stuff that's happening right now, the movement of change, you will see that, you know, if not a woman president again, it could be a Latino president. It could even be another black African American president. And if it was my choice, I think who most likely would happen, I have a feeling that Deval Patrick will actually leave Massachusetts governor down the line and actually go and work for Obama so he could prepare himself to be running in 2016. And there's a lot of great potential candidates as well, while the Republican Party still needs to find an answer for the lack of understanding and connecting with the American people. And so there'll be a lot of shifting going on in the next 4 years with the Republican Party. But I guarantee you, you watch Hillary Clinton will be our next president to be, if not another African American or potentially a Latino American person, because the Latino movement is growing. You know, as I was in this, polls this past November 6th, one of the things that stood out to me is that there was a lot of kids that was 18 years old, but guess what? There was a lot of teenagers that was under the age of 18 to vote. And therefore, by the next 4 years, they will be those young youth that are ready to be adults, to ready make their statement in the world and say they want to elect a Latino person. There's a lot of leaders that have already spoken at the Democratic Convention, and there's a lot of people that's willing to size and where to propel another person of leadership that represents the American public. And most importantly, that melting pot that we so much spoke about many years ago for a good decade or so, good term of the melting pot. This country is a melting pot of different cultures, different races, and we need to represent that. And I think these coming elections, 2016 and beyond, will prove for the first time that this United States of America is not about red, blue, white, or what have you. It's about the melting pot of American culture, and for the first time, you will see that opportunity to have a diverse group of people coming together and running for office. You know, whether or not you're a Republican or you're a racist or you whatever your personality is towards minorities or anything, you need to get with it, because it's gonna be you might just die with a heart attack, because the reality is that you're gonna see a very diverse group of people now, from women, white and black, to Latinos, to other African Americans, even the Asian community. So we're not gonna leave nothing out. It's just telling you, be prepared, because America is going to speak for the first time to say we want to be a melting pot in these electoral votes, in these elections to come, and as we continue to make progress, And in closing, I want to thank everyone for coming out to vote. You made the difference for our President Barack Obama to be elected again a second term. So thank you, and thank you for all those who sacrificed and put all your hard effort in the last 2 years in making this come true. I am Dimitri Frederick, signing off. You've been watching Voices for the Voiceless. And as always, I hope you have been enlightened, empowered, and definitely have been educated. Take care, and God bless.